I've long since forgotten why I signed up for yearbook class for my freshman year of high school. I've also forgotten why I signed up for it every semester after that first one for all 4 years of high school, but it's really the first year that is relevant to this story. It was in this class where I first met a man whom my friend Matthew and I nicknamed that tall hippie guy, because paying attention to people and their names during roll call is boring. Eventually, as we actually got to know him, we learned his name to be Vince, and he wasn't really a hippie, just a junior with a beard. My most distinct memory of him during that first semester was the day his English class was assigned the task of coming to school dressed as a literary character. He showed up dressed as Jesus, complete with a cross that he lugged around all day. For a reason long since forgotten by me, when our yearbook instructor asked him to pose for a photo, he had me lay across his shoulders like a piece of a human cross. I could honestly just sit here and list off nice sentiments and similar memories about Vince for this whole video, but this series is called Tales of Narcissism, and so I'm just going to mention things he did to me. That doesn't sound right. I mean, things that he showed me. Actually, that does sound worse. How about things he exposed to me? That seems easily misconstrued as well. What I'm getting at is penis, by which I mean to quote his one-word review of the film American Pie, a film he went and saw at the theater, and Matthew and I had asked him how it was. To which he replied, penis. We stared at him for a moment, quite confused, before he elaborated by saying, "You didn't laugh at that, so you probably wouldn't like it." So I guess what I'm getting at is he has a way with words. Part of that can likely be traced to his personal preferences in pop culture, literature, and other media. Personal preferences that he shared with me, and some of which I too was subsequently turned on to. A not insignificant percentage of the media that evolved my personality, creative muses, and philosophy on existence can be directly traced to my interactions with this man. Vince introduced me to the films of Stanley Kubrick by way of a viewing of A Clockwork Orange at his house, to the literary genius of Kurt Vonnegut by way of insisting I read Cat's Cradle a year before any English teacher assigned Welcome to the Monkey House to me, and he encouraged me to expand my own philosophical interest by also lending to me Douglas Hofstadter's tome, Gödel, Escher, Bach. But really, more important than all of those combined, it was he who introduced my friend Matthew and I to a whole new world of films by revealing to us the horrors, wonders, and pleasures of the masterpiece that is the film Burial Ground. If you aren't familiar with it, seek it out. It just may change your life too. In addition to laying some of the building blocks I've built my adult identity upon, Vince was a source of creative encouragement. My circle of friends got into doing video projects for class assignments largely because of teachers' stories of the video assignments done by Vince and his circle of friends a couple of years before. Despite being against the rules of the assignments, he even wrote the script for our assignment on Hamlet and was gracious enough to strip down to his underwear and act in the most memorable scene in the government class video created by Matthew and I our senior year. Those high school video projects were absolutely an integral part in my developing interest in filmmaking. Vince is also the person who said I was the worst drummer he'd ever heard, which in a very small part helped keep me out of the music world, something you should probably all be thankful for. And lastly, it was Vince in those yearbook classes who actually took 2 minutes to show me how to properly compose a shot with a camera, and encouraged my experimentation with page layouts despite the constant censoring and after-hours alterations from the class's instructor, who, despite actually being a literal hippie, was very adamant the yearbook maintain a rigid, traditional appearance in layout and content. All of this is a very long-winded way of saying that Vince wrote a book and demanded I read it out loud here on my YouTube channel. And all of the stuff I've already mentioned aside, he comments on most of my videos, so I'm inclined to grant his request. The lesson here being, be sure to like and subscribe and leave a comment, and maybe I'll do something you ask from me as well. The rest of this video is me reading a short selection from Ito Fusakan by Vincent Watkins. If you like it, follow the link in the description and check out the whole thing. Interior, Jack's apartment, night. Jack, identically positioned, is now sitting on the couch in his living room. The apartment's furnishings are sparse but elegant. Jack leans back and closes his eyes, relaxing for the first time in hours. Shortly, he stands, stretches, removes his hat, and walks out of frame stage right. The frame holds in place. Low kitchen noises, sizzling, and the sound of scraped pans. Jack emerges from stage left, now undressed to an undershirt and boxers, carrying and eating from a plate of stir-fried beef and vegetables. Jack eats with chopsticks. He sets his food down on an implied table, out of frame, before the couch, and still chewing returns to the kitchen. Seconds later, the sound of gurgling and spitting. Jack enters from a doorway in the rear of frame, now wearing striped, long pajamas. He hops over the back of the couch, lands on it lying down. He grabs the remote control from the implied table and turns on an unseen television. Actor who is not Peter Falk on the TV? Yes, you see, that's what I keep going over in my mind, because, I get confused sometimes. I have to go back to the beginning. You said a lot of things, very smart things, very clever. You're a very clever man. I admire that about you. Jack's cell phone rings in the distance. Jack is surprised. He mutes the TV and then retreats through the doorway in rear of frame. He returns holding his phone to his ear and begins the following conversation as he slowly makes his way back to sit on the couch. The call comes from voice 3, a weathered female voice. Hello, this is Jack Masters. I know you didn't write Ito Fusakan. Look, I'm going to talk to Susie again tomorrow. Can we just go through Susie? No, Susie wouldn't understand what I need to tell you. Will I? I believe so. I know that Jack Masters, the author, killed himself. There can be no reasonable doubt about that. You were not related to him. You did not know him. How do you know this? No one else seems convinced. They're all crazy. They're absolute lunatics, and you are inviting them into your life by playing along with this masquerade. What you are doing is not in good fun. What you are doing is not safe. Jack Masters killed himself, and they wouldn't stop looking for him. Do you think that you will be able to flip this off like a switch when you've grown tired of mocking them? So that's what you called to tell me? Be careful talking to these nutcases? No, I'm saying that only incidentally. Because if you know what I've been talking about, if you were listening in on those conversations, that means that you're one of them. You're one of the lunatics you're warning me about. I am not a lunatic. Most of Jack Masters' readers are not lunatics. You're dealing with outliers, the fringe of the fringe. So are you. No, I don't deal with these people if I can help it. But as you can imagine, they're making a lot of noise about these recorded conversations. So what's your problem? What kind of question is that? It's not my problem. I'm calling to help you. So help me out. When you talk to Susie tomorrow, you can't confirm or deny anything she says about Ito Fusakan. You have to be interested, reassuring, responsive, friendly. You have to engage with her. But you can't tell her that her beliefs are correct or incorrect. And you can't offer your own insight. That shouldn't be difficult since you obviously haven't read Ito Fusakan yet. This is very strange subject matter for an urgent warning. I know how ridiculous this sounds, but you're the one who created this ridiculous situation. Anytime you talk to one of them, you are talking to each of them. They're not all friends. They are joined by their obsession with Itafusakan, but each has their own exegesis, their own mad passion and confidence in their understanding, and they think this book contains important insights into, well, potentially every aspect of our universe. And so, if I endorse any of their interpretations, you will negate every other. Well, okay, but so what? I mean, subculture drama aside, what are you really worried about here? How much clearer can I be? I don't know how else to say this to you. These people are unbalanced and they could become violent. You sound nuttier than anyone I've spoken to. You don't understand. Nope, sure don't. So what are you planning to do? Speed read Itafusakan tonight and then BS your way through the conversation tomorrow? I guess I could do that. You weren't even going to read it? Look, this is all a much bigger deal to you people than it is to me. I'm just playing along. I figure I'll have to come clean before long. It's too late for that. So what exactly are you suggesting? Am I talking to myself? Don't confirm or deny anything Susie posits. Don't answer questions. Isn't that just going to make everybody angry? They finally get in touch with the creator and he shrugs them off? Giving some kind of answer has to be better than just refusing to say anything. God, you don't understand anything. As long as you haven't weighed in, the book could mean anything. It could be a completely literal narrative for entertainment. It could be an allegory for your life. It could be a comment on the simulation hypothesis. It could be a comment on religion. It could be a religion. Nobody needs permission from the author to see these things inside it. Nobody even really wants his permission. They want to be proved right so they can win arguments with strangers, but on a personal level, they are more attached to their own speculative views than if they knew them to be true. I'm missing the detective's recap here. You might think that mysteries are just challenges to overcome, and sometimes you're correct. When you're solving a riddle, you want to know the answer. It's pointless if you don't. You don't want to go on wondering about it for all time, and you wouldn't. Even if you never learned the answer, you would soon forget about the riddle. It's going to say just one more thing here any second now. Come on. On the other hand, you have something like a magic trick. A magic trick can make you intensely desire to know how it was done. If you can't figure it out, you will forget about the trick eventually, just like a riddle. It won't dominate your life. But unlike the riddle, when you learn the solution to the magic trick, it will not be satisfying, but disappointing. Inevitably, the trick turns on one of few things that are not very interesting. A planted Confederate, for instance, or a sleight of hand technique that requires unimaginable dexterity but renders the trick trivial. A magic trick is more compelling when you don't know how it was done in most cases. I don't think that's true at all. What if you see a magic trick performed and you think you have an explanation for how it could have been done? The trick doesn't really have this, veneer of the impossible since you already have an explanation in mind. Wouldn't it be more satisfying to know whether you're right? Maybe, but I was using that as an illustration of general concept so that you could follow what I'm talking about. I'm just saying that people always want the answers to mysteries, but sometimes it's good to get the answer and sometimes it isn't. Fair enough. In the situation you're currently in, we're talking about something more complex than a riddle or a magic trick. In fact, it's not clear what would constitute a solution to the mystery. The meaning of the work is more like a collection of mysteries, perhaps combining to some unified purpose, but each needing individualized investigation. I haven't read the book yet, so I don't know what mysteries you're talking about. I don't I'm not saying the book has explicit, discrete mysteries in its plot. What I'm saying could apply to any sufficiently complex artistic work. I'm just saying that knowing the overall meaning of the work still leaves the question of what the individual parts of the work mean. You mean, like, okay, Animal Farm is about Soviet Russia, but you still have to ask, like, so what's the horse about? What does the rat represent? In a very simplistic sense, yes, that's what I mean. Yeah, okay, I understand, but I have completely lost track of what this has to do with anything. With a complex artistic work, it is possible to spend an indefinite amount of time in joyful contemplation, an entire lifetime perhaps. Giving an answer, any answer, to what the work means simply robs it of this possibility. But think of it this way. Last week, they didn't even know you existed. They were perfectly happy. They had an opaque text with limitless possibilities. They each had their own ideas of what it meant, and they each knew they were right. They even enjoyed arguing with each other. They hated each other for disagreeing, and they loved hating each other. There was never any need for it to stop. What are you going to tell them about Ito Fusakan that could possibly add so much depth to their lives? Considering you've never even read it. I don't have to come up with anything, though. Like you're suggesting, I can just pare it back. I'm not suggesting that. I'm telling you not to do that. Right, I just mean like you were describing. I can just agree with whatever Susie says. I don't really have to understand anything. Just like, oh, huh? Yeah, you nailed it. Good God, can you stop missing the point? I understand perfectly the point you're making, but I don't understand why you're being so melodramatic. You keep insisting that this fan base is so dedicated that if I shatter their illusions, they're going to start setting things on fire. But that doesn't happen. You know, when George Lucas made a bunch of crappy Star Wars movies, nobody went on a shooting spree. Yes, but, I mean, what's so special about this book that it's going to drive people to violence? It's not that the book necessarily... What is this book actually about? Well, the plot is rather convoluted. There are conspiracies, aliens, ancient religious orders, prophecies, a lot of that kind of stuff. Okay, so that's a magnet for loose screws is what you're saying? Well, no. I mean, maybe that's true, but that's not what I'm saying. All of that X-Files stuff is just whatever. That's the raw stuff of the text. It's the interpretation. Well, what's your interpretation? What do you think this brilliant book is about? I'm not one of the lunatics, Mr. Masters. Please stop treating me like I am. Regardless of whether you're one of the lunatics, you're involved in this because you know the book. Jack Masters did more artistically than just write a book. These people may see the meaning of life in Ito Fusakan, but that is not my focus. But you've read it. Can you just tell me what it means? Susie told you that Jack Masters committed suicide, right? Yeah, she said he jumped off a building, I think. He jumped off the 10th floor balcony of the Madison Marriott West Hotel. This is significant. In the final chapter of Ito Fusakan, the protagonist kills herself in order to save the universe. Which means she does this by jumping off a tower. Ah, yes. Most serious interpretations of Ito Fusakan revolve around this correlation. Now what you make of it depends a great deal on what do you make of it. Me, personally, I don't think that Jack Masters was already planning to kill himself when he wrote that final chapter. I think, to him, that was the ultimate display of nobility, to die for the greater good. The circumstances surrounding the protagonist's death are not significant in this respect. But when Jack later decided that he needed to end his own life, this incident was foremost in his mind. I don't think he chose this method of suicide specifically to coincide with the book. I think there was a great deal of conveniences involved as well. Convenience? It was just an easy way of getting the job done. So in effect, you think it means nothing? No, I wouldn't say that. I think that the events are related. As I said, his eventual death corroborates my understanding of the book, but others have interpreted his suicide almost as if it were part of the book. Like his manner of dying and his suicide note are the true final chapter of Itafusakan. Why did Jack feel it was necessary to kill himself? Jack may have been mentally unwell. Well, no kidding. I don't think he was actually saving the universe by jumping off a hotel balcony. No, I don't either. But his beliefs in the supernatural were not entirely without foundation. He had reason to believe that some malevolent, extra-dimensional force was using him to enter our world. This was not standard mental illness. Thinking you're possessed by demons seems like pretty standard crazy. I'm describing it in simplified terms because you have difficulty following anything else. If you want to know the full story, you should read his suicide note. Sounds like a real downer. It is. Of course it is. But it's also poignant and beautiful. You seem satisfied with his decision. I do think his death had some degree of artistic merit. Jeez Louise! Because of its connections to the book? In part. How long before his death did he write the book? That's unknown. He made repeated references to it years earlier, but the full text wasn't published until after his death. Susie asked me about someone else. She said someone else claimed to have written it, or that Jack Masters said someone else wrote it. Vance Whatley. Yes, that was the name. Vance Whatley didn't write Itafusakan. Why did she bring him up? Even Susie knows no one seriously thinks that Vance Whatley could have written it. I'm not arguing with you. I don't know who this guy is. He's some guy who didn't write Itafusakan. But what's the story there? Vance Whatley. So, Jack never took any steps to have Itafusakan published. Vance Whatley was a friend. I don't even want to say that. He was an acquaintance of Jack's. I'm not sure how they met or what their relationship was like from Jack's point of view, but it seems obvious in retrospect that Whatley wanted to exploit Jack's artistic output for financial gain. Jack had no interest in making money. He didn't even like taking credit for his creations. A private joke arose between them, which was subsequently made public. That involved pretending that Whatley was the author of Itafusakan. When Jack died, Whatley weaponized this private discourse to claim ownership of Itafusakan. Then he published it under Jack's name. If you go to buy the book now, you won't find Vance Whatley's name associated with it anywhere, but that's where all the money goes. Why would Whatley publish the book in Jack's name if he was trying to claim authorship? Because he really only wanted ownership. If you divorce the book from Jack's legacy, it's meaningless anyway. All this wrangling about authorship and ownership, it's all behind the scenes. If you go to look up Itafusakan, you're going to see Jack's name, and that's it. So it was just about money? It seems so. I've never even heard of this book. How big of a seller was it? Well, not... He didn't know at the time how much it was going to be worth. He thought it was going to take off more than it did. There's not a single person associated with this book who doesn't sound completely out of their mind. Do you think that you're an exception? I have nothing to do with this. Are you kidding me? Look, you people started calling me. And you pretended to be the author. And you made a date with a girl based on that misrepresentation. And now, I think you're interrogating me for details to help you deceive her. A date? For crying out loud. Alright, your input has been duly noted. Is there anything else I can do for you? You haven't done anything for me. Yeah, well, likewise. And cut.